Hi there, welcome to my channel. Today we'll be talking about containerizing Django application using Docker. Docker is a software for that gives you the ability to package your application and dependency with a guarantee that your application will run the same on all environments. However, by the way, if you are new to Docker, I made a tutorial a little while ago on it, on like from the basics. Some of this which I would kind of touch on in this tutorial, some which I won't. However, I'm going to link the video, the link to that particular video somewhere around. You can check in the description below, and you'll find a link to that tutorial if you need a refresher on Docker, or if you are completely new to understanding what Docker is and what value Docker provides. You can check the video out. Without further ado, let's get right into it, shall we? So yeah, I have gone ahead to prepare a very simple Django application, and I'm using Poetry as my virtual environment for my dependency management tool. That's essentially what I've done. And not to worry, the all the code in this tutorial, the repository, I'll put the link to the GitHub where this code will be. So, and if you also need to cross-reference at any time, the link to the source code will be in the description below. All right, that being said, so in case you don't have Docker installed, you need to first of all install Docker. You can come to docker.com, right, and then Docker desktop, this is it. So what you can do here is install Docker on your machine. If you don't have it installed already, once you come to the website, it's a very straightforward step. You click to download and then you follow through the installation process. That is a requirement for this tutorial. Containerize this application, we need something called a Dockerfile, and we create that anywhere by naming it Dockerfile. All right, so create Dockerfile. I mentioned earlier you have to name the file Dockerfile, and you highlight your instructions in here. Another thing now we need to look at is the registry. Docker registry is called up.docker.com, right? And here you can look for pretty much anything. So here we need Python, because Python is like our base requirement for the project we are about to Dockerize. And we are just gonna pick any version here. Well, it's pretty good idea to pick something like Alpine or Slim, because Alpine particularly, and the reason for that is because it is pretty lightweight. And but in this tutorial I'm going to be using Slim. No, sorry, that's not what I want. Anyways, so we come here and the instruction to do so, to build this Docker file, we are using this version 3.10 Slim. All right, and then to build the Docker file, we provide the instructions like I said earlier. So we say from, you can see I'm having some syntax highlighting there telling me what do I want to type. So we are saying from Python, all right, and then the version we want is 3.10 Slim. All right, the next thing we will do is setting our work directory, like the directory inside the container, which we'll see by the time we build this image. Once again, if you don't understand what this is, like what an image is, what a container is, I would advise that you check that tutorial I mentioned earlier. In there I went in details and broke down everything there. So you can do a refresher or a catch up, or even if you're learning afresh about Docker, it's a really nice resource to learn from. So yeah, we are going to have work directory. So what work directory does essentially is, in the container, this is where our code will be running from. Essentially it does like make directory and then cd inside that directory. So we set our work directory. Let's call this let's just call it app. All right, let's just call it app. Okay. Something else we need to do is set some environment variables, and these are pretty kind of they're actually like standard when you're working with Python and containerizing Python, really. There are two important ones, really, and this is kind of like standard. You'll see this a lot in like Docker files of Python application, really. The first one is Python don't write byte code, then you set it to 1. Okay, it's a pretty long one, but yeah, it's, and what it does is to let Docker knows that to let Python not allow Python to write the .pyc files into the container, which is pretty good because that will be a lot of cache files I've written there, anyways. Another one is Python, all uppercase, by the way. Python unbuffered, and then set this to 1 as well. All right, what this does is it allows Python write output to like the terminal to like standard out from inside the container. So just putting that out there. Anyways, the other thing we want to do now is, I mentioned earlier, this project was set up using Poetry, so it would be nice to have Poetry installed so we can use it. So what we can do is run, that is a command for this instruction. We say run we should have pipx install Poetry, and like so we should have Poetry installed, right? And when we have installed Poetry, one thing we want to do is we want to copy all of our source code here inside the container that will be generated from this. So the instruction command for that is copy. You can see it's already kind of giving us the hint there. The source is our current directory, so we can do that by specifying by doing dot. All right, and the destination, which is our working directory that we've created earlier, will be /app. All right, so what we've essentially done is that, okay, when we are spinning up a container from this image, when you're building this image up, rather, copy all these files inside this container, and yeah, that is what this does. And where is it copying it to? Inside this work directory that we are specifying up here. And from this, we are mostly done, really. The other thing we need to do is that is quite important. I believe Django runs on port 8000, right? So we need to expose that port. So we say expose 8000. All right, then we need to run our Django application. So there are different ways you can go about this, really, but one way is to say entry point, because we are using Poetry, so we can do something like Poetry. All right, run. All right, Python. All right, dash, all these are string -m. All right, manage .py. All right, run server. Okay, so with this we can build an image of our Django application. Okay, so what we are going to do from this point now is to build the image, and to do that, what we have to do is use the docker command, which is called docker build. All of this I explained in that tutorial I mentioned earlier, so if you're not familiar with this, I'll drop the link somewhere around, and you can check in the description as well, so you can check that tutorial out to understand what's going on. So docker build, and then we want to tag our image. So the convention is that the namespace of where I want to tag it, we can put this tag anything, but the convention, like I mentioned, is like a namespace. So I would actually like to push this to Docker Hub as well, and to do that I need to tag it with my registry name. So which is with Docker Hub is your username. My username is this. If you are doing this, change this bit, right? This is my own username on Docker Hub, so you change that to yours, right? So you can then call this YT Docker tutorial. You can call it anything you want, right? And then you not forget the period, right? What we've essentially done is that we say, okay, Docker build me this image and give this image this tag name, right? And where is the Docker file I want to, because what we can do is to specify the Docker file by saying -f and the file, but by default Docker looks for the name Docker file. So if I put period here, dot here, it knows to pick up Docker file as the file I want to use, because that is the default. All right, so I just hit enter, and all things being equal, all right, we happen to have an issue here. All right, there's no one pipx, so I believe we should be able to do that with pip install. Let's do this again. Yes, and that's about it really. Now it has built us this image, and you can see if I do docker image ls, this is it 10 seconds ago, and it's of this size, right? This is literally the Docker image I just built. Oh yeah, I missed a step here. We have actually installed Poetry and copy our source code, but we did not install our dependency just yet. So to do that, you say Poetry install, and this will install our dependencies in there. We have to rebuild our image, but we can do is say docker build. I'm just gonna bring back that command, and all right, so docker image ls, so we just built that 6 seconds ago. Okay, so docker image ls. So what I'm going to do now is going to run this application with Docker. And how do we run that? We say docker run, right, -p to specify the port we want to map it to. So our host port of 8000, we want to map it to container port of 8000, which we are exposing here. All right, and then the name of the image you want to run. Okay, and we can run it like this. So we are just going to rebuild the image again. So we run that again like we were going to before, and voila, there we go. Now we have our Docker container running. And if we go here, we are not seeing anything. We are not seeing anything, and the reason for that is because we need to bind it to, because we need to add this and say but 8000. If we rebuild our image again, and then run this like before, Now we are seeing this. Now this is a Django specific error, and what we need to do is put this in our allowed host, this address in our allowed host in our settings. And if we do 0.0.0.0, and we'll refresh, that is not happening because we need to rebuild the image again. Okay, and by doing so, like before, we have been able to rebuild the image. So we can run this again, and if we go here and refresh, hello, I'm running a container. Yes, that is what we are talking about. Yeah, and that is, we are actually running this from the container of the Docker process. So if we come here and say Docker PS, you can see this is what we are running, and I can prove it to you further. If we exec into this, exec-it, say bash, right? And if we go for templates, we can echo this is from the container, and if we can overwrite index.html. All right, and if we come here and reload, you can see this is from the container, because we are actually doing this from inside the container. And we can exit out of this, of course, and you can see the process is still running. And if I restart this again and I refresh, that was because the container, they are ephemeral, so you can create and throw them away at will, as we've just seen now. So yeah, as you can imagine, this is a very, very powerful tool. If you are wondering why did we have to rebuild the container, the entire image when we made changes, that's because of a different concept, which I will show you in a different tutorial. This is all for this tutorial. I hope you found it useful and you've learned something. And if it has been very helpful for you, please consider subscribing to this channel, turn on your notification so you'll be the first to know when new content drops. Until next time, peace.